And for the Great British Debate, I'm asking, do you think that Sir Keir Starmer is trying to rig the elections? Now, before the break, I was also discussing how a teacher was sacked for not using a school child's preferred pronouns. Let's see what you've been saying. Ivan says, I wish we would please leave children alone. 8 years old is far too young to identify as anything. They need to go through puberty. Agreed. Louise says, my daughter wanted to be a boy when she was younger. We allowed her to dress in boys' clothes, but she knew that she was a girl. In her late teens, she realised she was a lesbian and that it wasn't gender issue but her sexuality. At now 40 years old, she's happily married to her wife and loving life. Exactly. That's the thing, that's the point. I wanted to be a boy. I used to try and go to the toilet standing up. Oh, hang on, did I say that out loud? I'm joking. I'm joking. It's time. No, I'm not actually. It's time for a Great British Debate this out. I was just a tomboy. I'm asking, is Sir Keir Starmer trying to rig future elections? Now, a leaked policy document hints that Labour plans to expand the vote to over 3.4 million EU nationals who pay tax, as well as introducing votes for 16 and 17-year-olds. Such moves could increase the electorate by up to 6 million voters. Now, that's an 8% rise on the current figures. Critics have accused Starmer of trying to rig future elections by enfranchising a large group of pro-Remain left-leaning voters, all of whom would be inclined to rejoin the EU in any further referendum. And this move could be devastating for the Conservatives and unseat many prominent Tory MPs. So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Sir Keir Starmer trying to rig future elections? Well, joining me now to discuss, David Kurten, leader of the Heritage Party, Jess Gill, political commentator, Matthew Statland, the political commentator, and James Mathewson, a former Labour Party spokesperson. I'm going to start with you, James Mathewson. What do you think? Is he trying to rig it?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's any rigging going on. I think it's simple in the fact that these people should have been able to have the vote before now. And I think it's just a case of bringing this up to speed. I mean, the Labour Party are going to change many things when they get into government. And there's going to be things that many people don't like, especially those with conservative views. And there's going to be things brought up to speed that haven't been brought up to speed for 13 years because we've had 13 years of Tory government. So there's bound to be issues like this that come up. But I think it's only fair to extend those rights to especially when we look at 16, 17-year-olds as well, across the board when it comes to voting rights, let alone just EU citizens.
But James, you're sort of bagging this in with all the other stuff as if it's nothing, it's just one of the other things. But it will significantly increase the electorate, and it is arguable that actually the people that will be entitled to vote are more left-leaning. Let's go to Jess Gill. She's a political commentator. Jess.
I mean, Nana, it's clear to me that slimy Starmer clearly doesn't care about the British people. It's a blatant attempt to hand our democracy back to the EU in order to win votes and bring us back to the EU. And it's completely diluting the voice of the British people. Starmer clearly doesn't represent the British people, and I don't think he's trying to by this move.
It wouldn't seem so. Matthew Statland.
Yeah, I haven't seen any evidence of Keir Starmer being slimy. On this, I think I disagree with him. Just be very straightforward. I think if you vote in a British election, you should be a British citizen. I understand there's an exemption for Irish citizens, that's fine. But I don't think we should be extending the franchise in this country to people who are settled here, who have a right to be here, but have chosen not to take up British citizenship. That's my view.
Seems an odd thing for him to do, David, don't you think, that he would do that? I mean, he's polled ahead. Why is he bothering with this nonsense?
Yeah, absolutely. But, I mean, if he wins, then he's going to do this, it seems, and then he's going to change the electoral system forever in terms of who can vote. So there'll be 6 million new people, like you said. So most of them voting for Labour, voting to go back in the EU. I think some of the people actually have the plan to say, OK, we'll wait for like 10 years or 12 years after the referendum in 2016. Then, in a new Starmer term, have another referendum. He'll get those people on the books to vote, then he'll have a second referendum and take us back into the EU. I'm very, very worried about that, and this needs to be called out from the very beginning.
Well, James, it seems a bit slimy for it to be, if it was inserted somewhere, it'd be in a manifesto, therefore there's no referendum. So then if he does get in, he'd say, well, it's in my manifesto. I mean, and so people would, this is something that would change the way we vote. Surely this is this is a fundamental thing that the British public should actually be consulted on.
Listen, of course it would be slimy if it was about a second referendum or revisiting Brexit in any way, shape or form. But it's absolutely not about that. There's nobody in the Labour Party who I've spoken to on any wing, faction, wherever in the Labour Party who wants to revisit Brexit. I don't think there's anybody in the country who wants to revisit Brexit, let alone in the Labour Party. It's in nobody's interest to do so. It's behind us. And I think even Keir Starmer, who, was one of the most vocal, Remain people in the country, has any interest in revisiting that debate because there's nothing good in it for the Labour Party, to be honest.
But what about the notion that he's putting it in a manifesto so that it avoids a referendum on the issue of him inviting these new people into the sort of electoral system?
Well, yeah, but you've got to remember, Labour we're a very difficult coalition of voters to bring together, and we've only just managed to get that back when it was, basically destroyed 2017, 2019. It's been very difficult to try and cobble that coalition back together and get working class communities like the one that I'm from in the northeast of England back and get their trust back after, the way that the party behaved over Brexit and over issues like Brexit. So it's not something that I see ever revisiting, whether it's in a referendum, whether it's in a manifesto or not, and avoids referenda. I don't think that would be the case. And obviously, with this, it is a policy proposal. It's something that's been investigated and it's something that's been researched. We haven't even got any proper solid proposals yet from the Labour Party on what
surprise. Jess, I want to bring you in. Jess, do you think that this is quite foolish, actually, for Keir Starmer to be actually putting that in there and that he's actually misreading the electorate with that?
I mean, I'm quite sure he's already backtracked on it, which is quite typical of Starmer. I think you just have to look at incentives. Starmer doesn't care about and doesn't try to appeal to the working class people. He doesn't try to appeal to the core voters of Britain. So he has to do this. He has to, extend the franchise to the people, to EU nationals, even though should they really be given a vote in this country when they don't have the same stakes as British people?
What do you think, Matthew?
No, I doubt this will be in the manifesto. It's a possibility. We can't rule it out. It's been mooted, so we should discuss it. Absolutely. But I agree with one of the other contributors that what we're trying to do here, what Labour are trying to do, and I broadly support what they're doing with plenty of criticisms along the way, is to draw the country together, bring the country together after 13 years of mismanagement of this country by the Conservatives and at first, of course, in the Lib Dem coalition with the Tories. So I think the last thing Keir Starmer wants to do is reopen the Brexit wounds. Yes, he's got to make sure that we are an economically successful country moving forward. I don't think that's going to involve a new referendum anytime soon. I've made it clear I don't think that you should be able to vote in this country unless you are a citizen of Britain. But I just think to say, just for a bit of balance, because nobody much is supporting the other side, that these 3 million EU citizens are contributing in enormous ways to our society. They're contributing to the job market, they're contributing in taxes and so forth. So I can see that some people might reasonably expect them to have a say as to how the country is run. I just happen to disagree with it.
David?
I don't think that EU citizens should be given the vote in national elections in the UK because British citizens don't have the vote in EU countries in their national elections. They don't even have the vote in local elections in EU countries anymore if they're resident there because of a ruling by the ECJ last year. But what I would say on the possibility of getting these people onto the electorate and then having a referendum is beware bait and switch. The Conservatives do it, Labour does it. You would probably think that the Lib Dems might do this as well. They say, oh, we're not going to do something. When they're in power, then they have the remit that they might not be in the manifesto, but they have the ability to introduce something into Parliament, whether it's in their manifesto or not. And there's a lot of people associated with the Labour Party, associated with their potential allies in the Lib Dems, who would want a second referendum after a certain period of time. So beware and look at very, very carefully at what you're getting